Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2024 TEDx Stevenson High School event. My name is Anu, and I am the co-president of TEDx this year.
My name is Yug, and I'm the director of operations.
My name is Sanjay. I'm the director of communications.
My name is Sanvi, and I'm the director of marketing.
And my name is Renee, and I'm the Director of Outreach. We're so excited to be your MCs for TEDx Stevenson High School 2024. During the event, please refrain from any flash photography as it will be distracting to our speakers. However, fret not. I know parents, you are excited to to listen and watch and record your speakers. However, all videos will be posted to the official TED site. All right, and then without further ado, we're gonna begin.
But wait, Renee, what's TEDx? I've heard of TED Talks and TED, but what's TEDx?
Good question, Anu. Here is a quick video on what TEDx is.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every...
I apologize, everyone. Technical difficulties.
corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prison.
Okay, because due to technical difficulties, we'll just explain it to you. TEDx is basically an independently run organization which is under TED Talks. This whole setup is not manned by anyone in the headquarters or company of TED, but by volunteers, such as ourselves.
And such as your lovely sons and daughters and lovely friends and peers.
Tonight, we have some of the brightest minds and the most passionate thinkers from our community to share their stories and ideas with all of you.
From thought-provoking talks to science and technology to stories about personal growth and resilience, today we are celebrating intersectionality, specifically ideas that are fueling connection, passion, and lastly, innovation. Throughout this event, we also encourage you to explore the "and" in your lives, to find the intersectionality of the everyday.
Autism, debate, advocacy. Reflecting upon his day-to-day life and his most life-changing experiences, he has found the intersectionality of his own life and his current passion and purpose.
His speech inspires us and encourages us to do the same, to find and to realize that everything happens for a reason that we define. Please help me welcome Garv Bakshi.
As I was researching topics of intersectionality, crossing paths, and what allows society to evolve, I came across one very unique proverb spoken by the esteemed Benjamin Franklin. The heart of a fool is in his mouth, but the mouth of the wise man is in his heart. Now, what this quote is telling us is that the wise man is someone who speaks through his or her actions and attitudes, while the fool is someone who knows of something and says something, but does not mean that something. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a couple things that we might confuse the word fool for. Like other words, unsuccessful. But that's absolutely untrue. I'm sure all of us in the audience, and this goes for me too, have made blanket statements before. It's just that to find our purpose, to innovate, to connect, and to create genuine passion, our interests, no matter how all over the place they are what define us. If we take the deliberate step to bring them together, we give ourselves the tools to innovate, the tools to be the wise man. Now, in my life, I found this unlikely intersection between the love I have for my family and the passion I have for public speaking. This intersection and what meaning it gave me defines me today. But for a little bit of background about me first, for around 7 or so years of my life, I was constantly told that I was a distracted yet proud child. I would happily walk into conversation, smile, nod, maybe even wave, and move on to the next best thing I could see, completely forgetting what the other person had told me about. But unfailingly, I would run home to my parents or my friends and make sure to let them know just how much I had learned from that conversation. I needed them to know how smart I was, how good of a listener I was. I craved validation, which in my life became a problem going forward. Now, there have been so many key events in my life that have led up to that intersection I mentioned prior, but I can't talk about all of them. That would take too long. So naturally, I've created a timeline of events that outlines pretty much all of them that really define me. The first of which is a second grade assembly I experienced on special needs. Now, an incredible group of individuals came to my second grade classroom to talk about important things, like autism, how to support someone who has it, and the general need to be respectful and accommodating to all of your peers. It was beautiful. It touched the hearts and minds of so many students. But I'm sure all of you guys can kind of tell where this is going. I was not one of those students. I was the kid sitting in the back of the bleachers, phone under my thigh, playing the coolest game I could find on the App Store. I was whispering to the person next to me about any topic I could think of, except for the one being presented to us. Or I was twiddling my thumbs, out of complete boredom. But again, I ran home to my parents and made sure to let them know just what autism was, how to support anyone who has it. I had no idea what I was talking about, but I made it sound like I did. Again, craving validation. But if I had paid attention, the contents of this presentation, the impact they would have had on my life, is something that's kind of surreal to think about. Now, focusing on the heart of the story, and my personal favorite date is February 20th, 2014, the day my little brother was born. Now, I stayed home that day because I was feeling a little ill, but my dad drove my mom and my brother back from the hospital. And as soon as I saw my mom walk in my mom's arms, walk in my mom's arms, I knew he would be incredible. There was genuine joy in our household. Everyone was laughing. Everyone had something to say. And I swear to all of you, at 3 days old, it sounded like he did too. It was beautiful and an experience I wouldn't trade for the world. After this point, 4 years passed and I turned 11. I continued to struggle with ideas of boasting my artificial talent or making sure everyone knew what change I could make in the world. But it started to catch up to me. I constantly thought to myself, aside from all the glorification, aside from all the lies I told people, could I really make any difference? Or was I just insignificant? This thought tore at me, and as an 11-year-old entering some of the most important years of his life, it was all the worse. But while I struggled with social complexes, my brother struggled with neurological ones. He had difficulties tying his shoelaces, opening and closing doors, and playing physical games like basketball or football. Not because the physical aspect was difficult, but because he couldn't wrap his head around the rules. Naturally, my parents wanted a formal understanding of what was going on, so they took him to the doctor. And on July 22nd, 2016, they found out that my little brother has autism spectrum disorder. Now, soon after we got the news, there was a clear paradigm shift in my household. Suddenly, we had to be worried about the volume of the TV, the volume of our voices in interactions, and how gentle we were with him. These were things we hadn't thought of before, and never thought we'd end up thinking about. Everyone was on high alert and, quite frankly, were confused. But all I had were questions. I constantly asked myself, all right, I hadn't been able to make change in the world in the past. All I had done was lie. But what change could I make for my brother? What could I do to make his world a better place if I had no tools to make it happen? This was the first inkling of passion I had felt in my life up to that point. But again, I had no tools to make it happen. I had no match to light the candle. Luckily, this entire dilemma was resolved for me as an eager freshman entering high school, and on these very grounds, attending my very first debate club meeting on August 27th, 2021. Now, walking into that room felt kind of magical. Everyone there had something to say about any political topic you could think of, whether it was carbon emissions, high-speed rail trains, or oil in general. It didn't matter what you projected yourself to be outside of debate. All it mattered were your actions and attitudes within the club, thinking back to the wise man we spoke of earlier. Naturally, that spoke to me. It was kind of poetic. So I kept coming. Week after week, meeting after meeting, I made my way to these very grounds to talk about debate. I learned how to put meaning behind each sentence, know each word of what I was saying, and slowly attended my first set of tournaments. The more and more I grew as a speaker, the more and more I learned, the more passionate I was, and finally, the more I was rewarded, winning my first medal in February 21st of 2022, and more to come after that. But again, there was still this void in my heart. My story arc had been resolved. I didn't need validation anymore. I had debate to be my outlet. But what about my brother? How could I make his world a better place? How could I make change if I had no understanding of what to do? I was lost. But one night, sitting in silence, I thought back to that second grade assembly I mentioned at the start of my speech. They had been a group dedicated to speaking to classrooms about such important topics. They touched the hearts and minds of so many, even if I hadn't been one of them. But I thought to myself, if I could speak to just one student in such an important way, that student, the education I provide to them on how to support someone like my brother, that education would become the standard of his future. But how could I make it happen? I knew I had the tools to speak, and I knew I had the framework for what I was going to do. That leads us to the next date on this timeline, July 10th, 2023, the day I co-founded the Lincolnshire Autism Awareness Project. Since then, I've worked with countless people and at countless schools to talk to students about, again, the important topics we mentioned before, related to autism, related to supporting people who have special needs, and generally how important it is to be respectful of all of your peers. For me, it's been an incredible experience engaging my local community in such a way, and really I wouldn't trade it for anything else. Suddenly, this void that had been filled with guilt and the need for validation was replaced with the complete opposite. I knew who I was, I knew who I wanted to be, and I knew that I could make change for my brother in an actual way. This drove me in it's been incredible since then, and the passion it's given me, the meaning it's given me is something that defines me at large at this very stage. Now after this, we've reached the very end of the timeline. One thing I'd like to make clear is that the unlikely intersection I've had between my love for my brother and the passion I have for public speaking saved my life in more ways than I could count. Now, to conclude, I want to touch back on that quote I mentioned at the start of the speech. The heart of a fool is in his mouth, but the mouth of the wise man is in his heart. The wise man is someone who speaks through his or her actions and attitudes, love and care dripping from their words, but that love comes from a place bigger than all of us, passion. Passion is our tool to make ideas life. Passion is our tools to make our names mean something when they are said. But most of all, passion is deliberate. When we choose to bring our interests together and give ourselves meaning beyond what we have right now, we become the wise man I know all of you, anyone can be. The same way it was with my love for my brother, the same way it was for my love for debate. Thank you.
Wait, Sanjay, what was the quote again?
I believe it was, the heart of a fool is in his mouth, but the mouth of a wise man is in his heart. Yug, don't be a fool.
Yug, I think you could benefit from a little education and enlightenment from another wise man, the one and only Samarth Dhanapadi. Reflecting upon revelations in AI and data analytics, Samarth shares information regarding improving our current education system today.
Please give a warm round of applause to Samarth Dhanapadi.
The world today is filled with endless information. And so the journey that our students take through education is similar to trying to navigate a vast sea of knowledge. But what if we could equip our students with a compass that allows them to seamlessly navigate their sea? This compass could be data analytics. Now, I want you to take a moment to think. Would you believe the United States of America ranked from 1 through 81 in mathematics globally? The answer is we ranked 34th. 34th out of 81 countries in mathematics. Now, before I talk about the future of education, I actually want to talk about the past. This was a computer from the 1900s, and this is a computer from today. Now, similarly, this is a classroom from the 1900s, and this is a classroom from today. Do you see the difference? I don't. The system we have in place today doesn't actually properly intake strengths and weaknesses of each child. It doesn't create a personalized learning system. But what if the standard education we seem to hold could actually change into something that was personalized? This seems far off, like a dream, but it's actually within the grasp of our hands, using data analytics. An example of the power that data analytics can hold is Khan Academy's personal AI assistant, Khanmigo. Now, what Khanmigo does is it takes into account the power of AI in order to help create suggestions for each child, regardless of their age or level. Now, other than personalization within our education system, we need to talk about overcoming learning gaps. Now, a company is already doing this, a company called Nori. What they do is with their system, they help adopt the curriculum for each child, helping understand what learning gaps they have and helping them overcome it, automating the process for teachers. So the question to me isn't whether we can use data analytics within our education system, but why we aren't already. Now I want to move on to an example. Let's imagine a child named Alex. Now Alex, like children across the world, has unique learning abilities and needs. Alex lives with autism and ADHD. Now, Alex, unlike his peers, needs special attention and resources. But the problem lies is that Alex lives in a low-income neighborhood, and the school he attends doesn't actually have the resources to help properly accommodate him. And this is where data analytics can make the change. Let's take a look at Alex's academic performance. We could see that Alex suffers when it comes to analytical reading, but he excels when it comes to visual subjects and skills. And with this in mind, we can make the change to his curriculum. We can make the academic journey for him better. But we can also recognize patterns. So we could take a look at his day-to-day life. And we could recognize that Alex, specifically on Tuesdays, seems to suffer in math. His test scores drop. Now, using data analytics, we could find out that same day he has physical education. Now, in order to see whether or not this is the root cause of his problem, we can make the change within his schedule. We can make the change and see whether or not this is the problem underlying. And we can make the fix and make his academic journey much, much more free. But why haven't institutions and organizations actually implemented this? Well, it comes down to three main problems. We have poor data. And when it comes to this, many institutions across the nation actually don't have the proper data to be analyzed. It's not in the same format or whatnot. And so without the proper input, we can never create the proper output. And then we have data privacy. Before we ever touch analyzing data, the first priority we should have is protecting our students' data. That's the first priority, not analyzing data. And at the moment, we don't have clear-cut laws or policies to help enact this, something we need to change. Then we come with siloed data. Now, this term refers to when groups or organizations don't have access within their organization to other groups or individuals. For instance, what I mean is that the English department could have critical data on Alex, but in order to understand the full circle, they would need to access the math department's data. And sometimes this isn't possible due to access limitations. So how can we fix this? How can we make the change? Firstly, we need to create training camps for each student, educator, and administration to help them understand what the tools can do and that the tools do exist and how they can make the impact for students, how they can make the change. Now, it's clear to me that we have the data, but we don't have the funding. And so I act upon lawmakers and policymakers to help increase funding, especially for schools that don't have the money, to help implement the tools and to implement the systems that we need. Now, before we talk about data quality in siloed data, or ever tackle the problem, what we need to address is creating a system, a clear-cut system for each school across the nation, a system that understands what data is accessed, what isn't, and how we can make the tools available, and what we can do to use them. Now, the reason I'm standing here today is not to explain all of this here to you, but I'm asking you to take charge, you to stand up. I want you to tell every person in this country that the future of education is here, and that it's indeed data-driven. Thank you.
In conclusion, the fusion of education and data analytics represents a groundbreaking opportunity to reshape learning paradigms.
Whoa, buddy, hold there. Did you even write all of that? I don't think you know half the words that you listed there.
Yeah, I mean, after listening to Samarth's speech, I got a little inspiration. And by inspiration, I mean ChatGPT.
Okay, I think you need way better inspiration, and probably one that isn't written by a robot. Our next speaker, Tanusha, however, is quite inspiring. And by inspiration, I think you should be taking notes given your entire ChatGPT scandal.
Presenting our next speaker, Tanusha Santosh. Let's accompany her on her journey of finding her identity, striving for answers about her self-identity, all while acknowledging her ethnicity, childhood, and values. So please give a round of applause for her.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. As I begin, I'd like to ask you all if you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered who you really are, by a show of hands. Thank you. For those of you who haven't, the best way to describe the system is sort of as a feeling of self-reflection and as a journey that leaves you with a lot of questions, but sometimes with some incredibly important answers. The first time that I had this experience was my sophomore year of high school, as my family and I had just gone on a visit to India. And it started with me realizing that at the very core of myself, there are two rudimentary facts about me. Number one, I was born and raised in America. And number two, I'm ethnically South Indian. So, both my parents come from the same city in South India. And when I was younger, I could never really remember the city's name. Kolumba would be my first thought, which is a popular Indian food, but no, this didn't sound right. So my follow-up to this would be Columbus, but this would confuse me even more because why would India, out of all the countries in the world, name a city after Christopher Columbus? I think I was about 11 years old when I first finally remembered the city's name, Coimbatore. Now, there are many ways to reach Coimbatore from Chicago, so let me take you with me on the journey that my family and I took my sophomore year. We begin from O'Hare International Airport and fly to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. From Abu Dhabi, we fly to Cochin, India, in the state of Kerala. After reaching Kerala, we get picked up by car and driven roughly 3 hours to Coimbatore, which is in the state of Tamil Nadu. One of the first things that I noticed when I stepped off the plane in the Kerala airport was the scenery around me. The airport outside Kerala had forests denser than I'd ever seen, and trees that seemed like they could touch the sky itself. But the biggest thing that I noticed was the moon. She shined down on me and enveloped the land in silver light, welcoming me to the place where I belong to, at least ethnically. And I stood there on the sidewalk outside the Cochin airport, and I stared up at the moon and I asked myself, am I the same as everyone else here? The short answer was yes, at least physically. Although I had plain brown eyes, brown skin, and straight black hair. My face is easily forgettable in the sea of others in Coimbatore because I look just like everybody else here. Nobody would look at me and doubt for a minute that I didn't belong here, simply because I looked just like them. But the long answer was no, not mentally. Although I shared many traits and physical appearances with people of Indian origin, I didn't think or operate like them because I hadn't been raised under the same culture and country. Although I shared so many physical appearances, it was apparently painfully obvious that I had been raised somewhere else because my extended family loved to harp on the fact that I operated with the big-eyed wonder of an American exploring a different place for once. But no matter, the moon welcomed me nonetheless. And as I stood there, I asked myself, do I really belong here? As I watched the moon and I thought to myself about my true identity, it became quite unclear to me. Although I looked like people here, I didn't think or act like them, and I didn't know whether I was to act more like the people I shared physical traits with or the people that I shared a passport of origin from. For a long time, I tried to hide the two halves of myself that were correlated with different countries. I would never let people know about the other half of myself so that they wouldn't try and figure out what I was trying to hide. For a long time, this was the way that I lived my life, wondering whether looking one way forced me to act like another group of people or sharing a passport of origin from another place made me act like them. From elementary to middle school to about halfway through high school, this was how I lived my life. But, of course, that was until something changed. And what changed was that after my family and I had returned from our trip in India, my brain started asking me questions. Questions like, why would you think that? Or, why do you say that? Or, most importantly, one day I looked myself in the mirror and I asked myself, who are you? At the time, without really knowing who I was, I recited the two basic facts about myself that I already knew. Number one, I was born and raised in America. And number two, I was ethnically South Indian. But although I knew these pieces, I didn't know how they fit together. I didn't know how the two most prevalent building blocks of my identity came together to shape my full whole. And this was a question that I wanted to know the answer to. Because if I couldn't answer it, then I was left wondering who I really was. And that was a question that plagued my mind for years. Eventually, I realized that the best way for me to fully grasp my true identity would be to accept how the two halves of myself fit together as one big whole. And so my journey began. I had to begin to find the beauty of my traditional Indian clothing. And I had to realize that being hopefully American wasn't a weakness, and rather that it was a time and place for me to learn and grow as a human being. I had to realize that my family's religion, although I had previously perceived it to be un-American, was just as real and valuable as every other religion around the globe. And as I progressed upon this journey, I not only was given the chance to reflect upon who I was, but I was given the chance to reflect on the world around me. As I came to grasp the two fundamental parts of my identity and how they fit together, I began to notice the differences in the people around me, and how each of their individual unique upbringings shaped them out to be somebody that was different than the person next to them, and how this was similar to me. And I realized that all these uniquenesses and these differences weren't things that set us apart. Rather, these uniquenesses and differences were things that united us as a globe, and when somebody stepped up and claimed their true identity, the world expanded in a multitude of amazing ways that it could never have before. When you step up and you claim who you truly are and come to terms with the different facets of your upbringing, you make the world not only a safer place, but also a more diverse and accepting place. A place that is ready to foster millions, even billions of different worldviews and perceptions. And a place that can offer us all the safety and the pride to be who we truly are. So, I would like to address you all, whether it be to people like me who had multiple parts of their own identity that they didn't know how it fit together, or whether it be to people who already know who they are and are comfortable with it. Remember that this life is filled with journeys. And although some of these journeys may look daunting, they have the power to leave us with some incredibly valuable results. And to look in the mirror and remember who you are. And if you don't know who you are, begin the journey to try and understand yourself, not just for your own benefit, but for also the world around you. Thank you.
Bro, Anu, my life is so boring.
Okay, how about this? Let's go to Cheesecake Factory after this?
Anu, if I go to Cheesecake Factory, then I'm going to see people from Stevenson. And then if I eat sugar, then I'm going to break out, which means I won't have good prom photos, which means all the money I spent on prom will not be okay, which means that my...
Whoa. Why are you thinking so far ahead? You have to take life one day at a time.
Anu, when did you become so philosophical?
You'll see. I think you should listen to Sanchi.
I agree. Showing the alternate perspective of moving from India to the United States, here's our next speaker, Sanchi Deshpande. She reflects on her personal growth and obstacles when it comes to public speaking and how that has allowed her to find her own voice and identity in varying cultures. Please help me welcome
Sanchi.
Here I am on this very stage today, standing in front of all of you, and yet I wouldn't have been able to do this maybe 2 years ago. Not because I was younger, but because my mind would simply not let me. I want to take you all through the journey of why I'm able to speak to all of you here today. So my dear friend Drake once said, "Don't worry about fitting in when you're born to be custom made." And this is exactly what I learned. I was born in India, and my childhood was one of a typical kid. I would eat, study, play, sleep, repeat. Same thing every day. I was also always an exemplary student. I always got straight A's and was liked by teachers. Everyone was quite sure I'd either be a scientist or a chemist. But my physics grade right now says otherwise. And the thing that stood out most about me was that I loved to speak. By that, I mean I'd never shut up.
am Sanchi, and I am 6 years old. My first teeth is fallen, and Tooth Fairy gave me a gift. That gift name is Pottery Wheels. Thank you.
That video is way longer, by the way. It's my key to a good night's sleep. So, because of this passion for speaking, it also meant I got opportunities to MC at events at my school or even outside. And in other words, I just love to speak. But then this all changed when at the age of 10, I moved to the US. I used to go to a school in Waukegan, and my mom used to pack an Indian lunch for me every single day. And on the very first day, someone asked me, "Hey Sanchi, what's that?" And before I could answer her, her friend proceeded to say, "It's Indian food. No offense, but Indian food is literally disgusting." And when someone says no offense, do they really mean no offense? So I was hurt. I took it as a personal attack. The other thing was that I did not have an American accent yet. And it isn't a bad thing, but I was too afraid. I felt separated. And the mental barrier in my head that was created due to this made me stop talking. I would talk when I had to, yeah, but I wouldn't contribute to group projects or make any friends. I'd be sitting like this in the corner during recess or lunch. Now, fast forward to 7th grade, COVID-19, the pandemic. Let me get a raise of hand of how many people were on their phone or running behind their kids instead of actually focusing on their work or on their meetings. A lot of you, and that was the case for almost everyone. But my mentality was that I've been a really good student, and I wanted to continue that. So I was a tryhard. Now, what's a tryhard? Someone who tries way too hard on things that don't really matter, something that's too pointless. Let me give you an example. My PE teacher used to give us mindfulness exercises, and I used to do them while no one else did. I would listen to them at night, and if I fell asleep while listening to them, they'd remain incomplete, and I'd have to do it again the next day until they were finished. That's how big of a tryhard I was. And because of this, I spoke in those meetings. And the silence that followed made me think that perhaps everyone was judging me. But I needed the teacher to see that I was focusing and I was trying. So that was the first step in getting back to the old me. Now, the second step, and the main one. Let me get another raise of hands. How many of you tried new things during COVID? Anything new? Whether it was a cookie recipe that failed miserably, or you finally started exercising out of boredom, so did I. And I was starting to run out of options. So my parents forced me to join the only thing left, the only club left at school. Debate. My worst enemy, my worst nightmare. So I decided I'd go there, do my research, not speak, and then call it a day. But at debate, I had my aha moment. I realized that so many people were speaking, saying and every 2 words, and using evidence to support the wrong side. But they didn't care, so why should I? And I stuck with that feeling for a few days. Then I asked myself, what's the worst that could happen if I spoke? Maybe everyone would think that I'm terrible at everything, make a meme of me, post it on the internet, and no one would ever talk to me ever again. But wasn't that what was happening right now? No one was talking to me anyway. So I accepted that worse, and the next day I volunteered to give a speech. It was quite magical. Just kidding, it was terrible. I messed up so much, but I was okay with it. I kept going. Now here at Stevenson, I've been part of Model UN, Debate, which are all public speaking clubs. I volunteer to be judged, and I've achieved a tremendous amount of success in those clubs because of that one decision to just go for it, accept the worst. And the worst didn't even happen. So I want to share with you all how important it is to public speak. So know this guy? This is Elon Musk, the guy who invented Tesla. And we know him by his name instead of, oh yeah, the guy who invented electric vehicles, because he was able to voice himself, public speak, pitch his ideas to investors and everyone else, and spread them. This is how important public speaking is to you. In fact, 45% of people say that fear of public speaking hampers their career growth. Therefore, 1, public speaking is important. And 2, small moments in our life trigger huge impacts. We don't realize when we make changes to ourselves, when, where, how, and then later we regret it, just like I did. So instead of letting other people's negative perceptions or our own negative perceptions about ourselves influence us, we should use our emotional intelligence in a good way. Because individuals with a good emotional intelligence tend to do very well on IQ test, cognitive ability test. But this isn't your ability just to test take and solve puzzles and other things. It's also your ability to raise yourself and make decisions that lead you to success. So instead of letting those small moments trigger you, you should be aware and realize how they affect you. And then make those decisions that would raise you to your fullest potential and your success. So listening to Drake's song, I listened to it too late, but I've told you it and you've listened to it now. So before it's too late, make the decisions that you need to raise yourself to your fullest potential. Ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen if I did something? Accept it, and then go for it. Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for Sanchi. And that marks our halfway point through the event.
Now we will have a quick 10-minute intermission. Please feel free to walk around, stretch your legs, and take some fire selfies with the backdrop outside that Anu and Mr. Brubaker spent like 2 hours putting up. Now, if you guys want to get Instagram famous like I do, hopefully one day, guys, please find our Director of Marketing, Sanvi, and she will post you on the Stevenson Instagram for all to see.
But don't go too far. After the 10-minute break, please return back to your seats for the next round of passionate speakers to take the stage.
All right, we'll see you in 10 minutes then. Thank you.
I hope you all had a wonderful break and are pumped for the next round of speakers.
We for sure did. We took billions of selfies. I don't know if you saw us backstage, but we took a lot.
Renee, I gotta admit, but I think you took too many selfies. And I think you need to stop concentrating on your own identity, but learn how numerous identities coexist with one another. Maybe if you listened to Alina's speech.
I think you're just a hater, but I guess that's true. I'm already out of storage and I have like 256 gigabytes. So. Now let's give a round of applause for Alina Chian and her speech on the intersectionality of workplaces and diversity.
Before I begin, I hate to break the bad news, but I'm giving you guys a pop quiz. So don't be afraid to yell it out for me. I'm going to ask you a series of quick questions. What's 5 times 7? 7 times 8? 9 times 9? Seems like you guys know your multiplication. But allow me to explain, because some of you might have learned your multiplication facts years ago, and for some of you, maybe even decades ago. For me, there was only one way to be smart. Growing up, I was given these timed times table worksheets in my 3rd grade and 4th grade student life. Well, in order to be smart, all you had to do was complete this worksheet faster than anyone else in the class and slam that baby down the desk for everyone to hear. If you were able to do that, you were definitively the coolest kid in the class, the coolest kid on the playground, and I wanted to be you. But, alas, more to it. To the untrained eye, this is what it would look like when 3rd and 4th graders were turning out answers under the clock. But to me, the seasoned warrior, this is how it would feel. Now, in terms of intelligence, there are 2 forms which are most commonly recognized, and that is street smart and book smart. I'm sure you all are already well aware of the archetype. The street smart kid is the one that's rugged on the edges, a little bit blocky, a little bit individualistic maybe, and the book smart kid is the kid with the 1600 SAT. She has an AP course load, dual credit maybe, set to go to Stanford or an Ivy League of your choice. But I want you all to tell me which one you personally have been conditioned to believe is more important when it comes to navigating life. So all in favor of street smart, please raise your hand. And book smart. It seems pretty split, surprisingly. But for me, and I believe to be the case with many other children of immigrants, book smart was the only way to go. I was taught it was like a recipe for the rest of your life, quite literally. The ingredients were simple. You would get straight A's. You would get an internship at some prestigious company, maybe Goldman Sachs. You'd end up in an Ivy, smooth sailing for the rest of your life. So a successful one. But it was only until I entered late middle school, or even early high school, when I realized that my cookie-cutter definition wasn't quite cutting it. I met people that were intelligent in many other ways, people that were extremely good at expressing themselves, their opinions, and communicating thoughts. I met people that were really good at understanding abstract concepts that I couldn't even begin to grasp. And I would be stupid for thinking that those people were not intelligent. But that primitive understanding of intelligence, the one-dimensional one, the one that's akin to times table sheets, is still very pervasive in our society today. My experiences have been also confirmed by science. A study by Howard Gardner, a psychology professor from Harvard University, published a study confirming this in 1983. In it, he proposed a pluralistic view of intelligence. And there are just 9, maybe even more than 9, pieces of intelligence that are defined by the unique ways in which we approach problems. In his study, here are just 9 of them. Musical, naturalist, spatial, interpersonal, linguistic, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, existential, and of course our best buddy, logical mathematical intelligence. So, needless to say, my perspective on intelligence had been confirmed by my own experiences and by science, yet society didn't seem to agree with me. Today, 55% of the American workforce believes that their place of employment is doing enough to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. To put that into perspective, about half of the American workforce believes that their environment is not actively seeking out new perspectives. That's heartbreaking and detrimental to our economy as well. Because when you have new dimensions and new differences, you open up so much more. A McKinsey study surveying 366 companies found that uniformity is at the root of a myriad of problems. At best, teams with uniformity develop less ideas, and at worst, they run the risk of letting their inherent biases drive groupthink. That means that a male and female engineer might have differences in the way they would approach a problem, as different as night and day. But that is a good thing. The same study found that companies with firms that were partnered together with management teams that were diverse in gender and ethnicity were up to 25% more likely to be above the national industry's financial return rate. But in order to demonstrate that difference clearer, I have a proposal. So, put your Crocs into sport mode and walk with me onto the wood chips. This is uniformity, a staple to any elementary school's playground. As you can see, it's very short, it's very straight. The moment you walk up onto that little staircase, that little ladder, you know what you're strapping yourself into. The solution is right in front of you the moment you decide to choose uniformity. But this is diversity. As you can see, when you are climbing those stairs up to the height of that roller coaster or that slide, you might regret your decision a little bit. There's a lot of twists, there's a lot of turns, and all of those I like to call clash in perspectives, because the new ways, the new experiences that you expose yourself to cause you to be a little lightheaded. But I can promise you that the innovations and the connections that you get out of the experience are well worth it. The same way that choosing to ride Godzilla at Six Flags would be the best choice. But in order to apply that knowledge, allow me to give some examples. That might mean listening to some new music, that hyperpop song. It might mean getting out of your little echo chamber on the internet and going towards some opinion papers that you typically wouldn't reach for. It might mean adapting to the learning styles of your fellow classmates, of your fellow colleagues, and it might mean choosing that kid to be your partner for the group project in the class that no one talks to. Put in a phrase, it means lifelong learning. So, if there's one thing I ask you to take away from my presentation, it's that you make yourself into that kid on the playground, and that you choose the better slide. Thank you.
To be honest, it's not looking that great for me. I don't think I'm on either path, book smart or street smart. No wonder why I failed my math test today.
Maybe it's because you choose to take 6-hour naps and not study, Sanjay.
But my mom makes me sleep at 9 p.m., and it's part of my daily routine. Plus, I need my beauty sleep.
Learn to make your grades better, make your life better, and quite frankly, Sanjay, you gotta get on the grind to make your ChatGPT skills better.
That's funny. Anyway, introducing Casper Kurek and his speech that will teach us to break our routines and try the new flavors that life can actually bring to us. So, please give a round of applause for Casper.
Pay attention, Sanjay.
A few months ago, my friend said something seemingly mundane that has since stuck with me. I asked her what time she wakes up in the morning. A basic question. For me, I like to set my alarm for 6:37, not a minute later and not a minute less. That's 3 minutes to get out of bed, 10 minutes to brush my teeth, wash my face, pick out an outfit, 20 minutes to eat breakfast and get out the house, 30 minutes to drive to school, always leaving early just in case of traffic, and 5 minutes to walk to my class. The same thing every single day. Expecting her to say something similar, I was completely shocked when she told me that it depends. It depends? As someone who found comfort in a strict routine, it had never even crossed my mind that some people have very loose routines or no routines at all. For me, having a routine meant order and predictability. It meant having my day flow smoothly and not having to think about the next step. The same thing every single day. Soon, I realized I was becoming something closer to a grocery list than a high school student. When is the latest I can leave the house in order to make it to school on time so I can maximize sleep? How much time can I spend while making breakfast while still getting 2 full minutes to brush my teeth? Although these thoughts sound absurd, I was truly obsessed with perfecting my routine in the same way that an engineer is obsessed with optimizing a machine. However, that's the problem. We are not machines. Well, we are not destined to live life in the most efficient way. Our primary goal is not just getting from point A to point B, but instead to enjoy getting from point A to point B. In the midst of this routine crisis I was having, I stumbled upon a rather profound statistic. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic can be used as the perfect case study to investigate the impact of routines due to its immense impact and recency. As noted by the National Library of Medicine, during the pandemic, on average, time spent on physical activity decreased by 112 minutes per week, while time spent on inactive activities increased by 21 minutes per day, leading to more cases of suicidal ideation and depression. The National Library of Medicine attributes this data to the fact that during the pandemic, people's routines were completely eliminated, leading people to have too much free time that they knew what to do with. However, I would like to offer a different perspective. Instead, it was the creation of new routines that led to this mental health crisis. People became enthralled with technology, quickly resorting to social media and streaming services instead of participating in their normal daily activities. It was never the elimination of routines that caused this mental health crisis, but the creation of new ones that invited a plethora of unsustainable habits. So why does this all matter? Why should we care? To start, the rules and regulations that we place onto ourselves in the form of routines are arbitrary and have no grounds in reality. What has made my junior year better than my sophomore year is my determination to break the routine. I choose to stay up late talking to my cousin on the phone who lives across the country, even if it means I'm going to lose a little bit of sleep. Or I choose to catch up with my friend who I see in the hallway, even if it means I'm going to be a few minutes late to class. Sophomore year, I fell into the trap of living the same life every single day. At the time, I never realized the disservice I was doing to myself by placing such strict boundaries. However, then I realized that these boundaries were just that, self-imposed boundaries. For example, who's to say that we should go to bed at the same time every single night, even if we need different amounts of rest based on the day we've had? Albert Einstein once said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get a different result. How can we expect today to be better than yesterday if we're not actively trying to change it? As high school students or adults with careers, routines are a fundamental part of life. With the strict schedule that routines shove down our throats, it's necessary for us to find a balance between the monotony and the chaos that a lack of routine provides. So, am I saying that routines are always a bad thing? Well, no, of course not. In fact, routines are the very basis of our functioning society. Routines allow people to grab a cup of coffee at the crack of dawn for their red-eye flight and then grab a Crunchwrap Supreme from Taco Bell when they land. After all, we expect services to operate during their scheduled hours. Break the routine. Try something different. It can be as simple as cooking dinner with your family instead of ordering takeout. While you're at it, you'll find yourself nurturing precious relationships with your family while also learning fundamental cooking skills important for your future. Or you could try taking the bus to school instead of driving. You never know. You might just meet someone that can change your life. And yes, maybe having a strict routine can allow someone to become more successful or achieve more. However, I warn you, the path to prestige is often a path that one must go down alone. So I encourage you to flip the script, and instead of prioritizing your achievements, to prioritize your relationships. As noted by the Harvard Study of Adult Development, the longest running, most in-depth study on human happiness in the world, relationships are a lead for a happy life. Not money, not social status, and not fame. The way we perceive this world individually is based on how we interact with it. One who puts more effort into experiencing all that they can is often rewarded with a sense of exuberance and a newfound appreciative outlook on life. These rules and regulations that we unknowingly, yet willingly place onto ourselves shield off so many opportunities and experiences that are begging to be lived. We must unlearn these restrictions and embrace the spontaneity. There are countless movies, TV shows, books, foods, cultures, the list goes on, of things that we have not experienced and will never get the chance to experience. But we have to try. What is the point of being human if not to try to experience everything? What is the point of being human if not to appreciate what other humans have built around us? Stop restricting yourself. Break free from the molds. Break your alarm clock if you dare. Break the routine. Thank you.
Well, I, for one, will be breaking my alarm clock to get more sleep.
Yeah, Anu, based off the fact that I saw you sleeping through physics, I don't think you should take any class before noon in college.
Yeah, those problems blew my mind. But that's perfectly fine because with the help of our next speaker, Gina, I'll learn how to piece back my brain together. But not in two parts, but as a whole. Let's put a warm welcome together for Ji Jia Chen.
Moment, everyone. In the meantime, if you can't hear the music, I hope you enjoy that. Give us one moment. Thank you so much. All right, could we do another round of applause for our wonderful speaker, Ji Jia Chen? Thank you so much.
Good evening. Please raise your hand if you have heard of the concept of left and right brain. Many of you. When I was in elementary school, I was given 2 workbooks to work on during summer vacation. The first one, I enjoyed doing it so much. It was lots of coloring, shapes, and space for creativity. On the other hand, the other one, it was filled with questions in math, science, language, all these subjects I used to hate as a kid. And not only that, this workbook also taught me how to procrastinate. And on the cover of the first book, it says, train your right brain. And on the cover of the second one, it says, train your left brain. That was when I first learned about the classification of left-right brain. And ever since then, I've been really curious of this concept. And in case you share similar wonder, I'm here to tell you everything I know about left-right brain. This classification originates from Nobel Prize-winning researcher Roger Sperry, who researched into brain split patients and discovered that there seems to be an association between different brain parts and different brain function. Over Over the decades, the idea of left-right brain has been simplified into left versus right brain. So is there any convincing evidence for us to believe in this concept? Well, a recent Harvard article has shown us that although there has been proven connection between brain function and brain parts, it's more of a figure of speech rather than an accurate scientific description. In addition to that, a research from the University of Utah stated that this idea is more localized within a certain region. We cannot just generalize it to the whole global population. Despite being an oversimplification, why is this so appealing for us? Well, there are two factors contributing to this. The first one, dualism. It's our human nature to put two contrasting elements together, such as day and night, sun and moon. In some culture, like the Chinese one, we have yin and yang. And so left and right perfectly fit into this pattern, especially because cognitive styles is such a complex phenomenon. So if we can simplify it into just two options, it's much easier for us to comprehend it. And the other factor is tribalism. Tribalism describes our human tendency to separate people around us into us versus them. To do this, we can get a sense of belonging. Let's say if you are labeled as left brain or right brain, then you'll find people in this group who share similar hobbies, similar majors in college, similar career pathway. So, at this point, by a show of hands, how many of you think you really know what left-right brain dominance is? Few of you. So let me give you some examples. When you are trying to flirt with someone, and you know they are left brain dominant, you start by saying, "Hey, do you happen to have a Band-Aid? Because I scraped my knee falling for you." And it will be like, first, no, I don't have a Band-Aid. Second, what you need is not a Band-Aid, but be less clumsy. Yes, it's off-putting, but we also need to understand that's how they think and act. They value logic over emotion. But only in rare circumstances when people get to experience right brain dominance. The story I'm about to share happens to a Japanese woman who is now the writer of this famous book, Left Brain, Right Brain, 5 Steps of Conscious Change That You Can Experience. One day, she woke up feeling this quietness in her room. It wasn't complete silence. She can still hear the birds chirping in the distance, car rushing outside. But she also felt a level of happiness and peacefulness that she had never experienced before. She walked around her room trying to call for help. And she realized that every single object in her room seems to be so perfectly placed that there's art in it. And then when she took out her phone trying to reach for help, she realized that she cannot understand all these random symbols on her phone, despite them being numbers from 0 to 9. Eventually, she was rescued, but she described her experience as a conscious change from her left brain to her right brain. That's exactly why she couldn't understand those numbers anymore. She couldn't speak, but she can feel the art, she can feel the level of peacefulness and happiness. And that's exactly why many people say there's actually a heaven hidden in our right hemisphere of brain. Now, I want to invite you all to look at an analogy between our hands and our brain. Please take out a piece of paper you got when you enter through the doorways, and also the pen. Thank you. When you are ready, try writing your name with your non-dominant hand. For many of you, it will be your left hand. I see some people trying but struggling a little bit. And when you are ready, feel free to share what you got with your neighbors. I suppose it was a bit awkward and difficult, right? And this is what I got. Yes, feel free to laugh at it. So when you were doing this exercise, you might have realized that since you were young, we were trained to use our dominant hand for the rest of our life. And we often don't question that. And very similarly, we only use our dominant brain, the one we feel more comfortable in using. And because of that, many of us limit ourselves to just one hemisphere of brain. Then my question for you is, do you want to be one thing for the rest of your life? Let's look at this graphical illustration. We can see that function of 1 to any power is just 1, very limited. But if you can incorporate both hemispheres of your brain, then you get this function, 2 to any power. You can see it's an exponential growth. It's a curve that will get steeper and steeper as you go. At the same time, if you limit yourself to just one hemisphere of your brain, then your potential will ultimately approach 0. While you are able to incorporate both hemispheres of your brain, then your potential will approach infinite. So my last question for you is, when you, everyone here, have the potential to be everything, when your potential is infinite, do you still want to be one thing for the rest of your life? Thank you.
Sanjay, when are you get your driver's license, man? It's embarrassing. You're a senior and I'm driving you around everywhere.
I know. I've been trying really hard. I mean, don't worry, I'll pass it one day. Anyway, I think I want to buy a Tesla.
Sanjay, a Tesla is tough, but with what money, man? Literally yesterday, I bought you a donut and it cost $5.
I mean, one day I soon will be able to afford that, but I don't know how I'm going to do that right now.
Okay, Sanjay, I think you should hear from Rishi about the implications of EVs on our day-to-day lives. And in the meantime, try to find out how you're really going to get money to afford a Tesla when you can't even afford a donut.
You're just a hater, Yug. I mean, but I'd rather listen to an expert on electric vehicles. So please welcome Rishi Sridhar.
It's over. You see, marketing has gone way too far. Well, I can't even say it's marketing right now. It's more of brainwashing. They implant an idea in your mind which grows and grows every single day until it influences every single thought, idea, and action you take, all biased towards that one marketing campaign. You might ask why I'm saying this to you. Well, it was all because of one question I had a long time ago. What is the best solution to stop global warming and pollution? And when I asked this to my friends, family, and neighbors, they all said various things. They said reduce fossil fuels, more of green energy, clean energy, and even nuclear energy, and various answers. They were all perfectly fine. But at the end, they all came to one almost unanimous answer: electric vehicles. I was surprised. I didn't know what an electric vehicle or an EV was at that time, so I went to my neighbor who had an EV, and I asked him why he had an EV or an electric vehicle. And he said, it was for the tax credits. I'm like, come on, please tell me the real reason. And then he told me that it saves the environment. I'm like, it's a car. It produces carbon dioxide. How does it do it? So he gave me this whole lecture on how EVs are good, they use electricity and not fossil fuels, so they don't emit carbon dioxide. But I wasn't convinced. So I went on to do my own research, and I found that EVs are said to have an almost zero carbon emission on the road. But what does that even mean? That means when you drive your EV on the road or anywhere you go, they don't produce any carbon dioxide. But does that mean they don't produce any carbon dioxide at all at any point of their life? Well, to answer that, we have to look at EVs from a perspective of climate change. And the first problem arises with the source to power electric vehicles: electricity. You see, America is the world's largest producer of clean energy, and that contributes to almost 20% of the nation's entire electricity produced. Wait, 20%? Where does the other 80% come from, though? Does anyone here know that? Just give me an answer. It's okay. Shout it out. Coal. I heard that. Yes. Coal and natural gas are the biggest sources in America to produce electricity, which is, again, fossil fuels. So even though electric vehicles are said to have a near zero carbon emission on road, they produce just the same amount of carbon dioxide as gasoline cars, but long before they even went out of your garage. And also, they didn't just fall out of the sky into your garage, did they? They were made somewhere, manufactured. And when you look at the manufacturing process to make these electric vehicles, you realize that they are not just as harmful as regular gasoline cars, but even worse. And the second problem here is the very heart of an electric vehicle: a battery. You see, making a battery is no easy feat. It requires enormous amounts of energy and resources, such as lithium, cobalt, nickel. And to mine these, you require tons and tons and tons of chemicals and water. So you see, when they're done mining these resources, nickel, cobalt, and lithium, the land is left nothing but a barren piece filled with chemicals unsuitable for agriculture, habitation, or just to simply live over there. And even after you're done mining these elements and ignoring all of those, you can't just put that in an electric vehicle and expect it to work. No, you have to process these elements. And that's especially done in Africa and China, where they heat these elements to temperatures of up to 1,000 degrees Celsius using electricity. And how is the electricity produced in those countries? The major source is, again, a fossil fuel. So, in a sense, every step of an EV production involves the production of enormous amounts of carbon dioxide. And these are just the environmental effects of electric vehicles. You see, especially the mining of cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Africa faces one of the worst human rights violations of the century. Children as young as 8 years old have been enslaved to work here in these mines for absolutely near zero compensation, and adults, they earn less than $5 a day, which pushes them into the worst, one of the worst poverties of the century. So keeping all of this in mind, to answer the million-dollar question of the night, do EVs actually stop pollution and global warming? Right now, no. But what can we do to make it better? You see, we can green the grid. And by green, I mean produce the electricity from the electric grid using natural and renewable resources such as solar energy, hydro energy, and from windmills, which are all zero carbon and much helpful for the environment. In essence, taking out the factor where EVs produce the carbon dioxide long before they drive. And also, we can increase the efficiency of these gasoline and electric vehicles. What that does is these cars and vehicles travel a much longer distance for less fuel. And that, again, is less carbon dioxide. So let's not just rely on electric vehicles for a much greener and cleaner Earth, but let's make a more comprehensive solution to save the planet and promise a much safer place for future generations to come. Thank you everyone for being here, and have an amazing evening. Okay, I'll just take this, I guess.
What an amazing way to close off our event. Now, before you all rush off to get the autographs of our wonderful speakers, we would like to take a moment to honor all of the mentors and support the TEDx Planning Committee for 2024 has received. From mentors to support to former TED Talk speakers, TED Talk producers, actors, public speakers, and lastly, the most important part of all, the guidance and support of Mr. Brubaker. Mr. Brubaker, would you come up here, please? Go in the middle, yeah. Of course. Without Mr. Isaac Brubaker, this event would not have been possible nor plausible, so if we could have a big round of applause for him.
Lastly, a big thank you and round of applause to our wonderful speakers who continued the dedication and has uplifted the TEDx mission. Please take a bow. And with that, the TEDx Stevenson High School event 2024 has officially concluded. We hope you leave today with new insights and ideas, allowing you to find the intersectionality or the and of your own lives. Have a good night, and we hope to see you guys next year.